The stagecoach rattled into Chloride, Arizona on a scorching June morning in 1882, and Rosalie Warren knew immediately she had made either the best or worst decision of her life. Dust coated her dark hair and traveling dress as she climbed down from the coach, squinting against the relentless sun that turned the desert landscape into shimmering waves of heat. She had traveled from Boston with nothing but 2 worn carpetbags and a letter of employment promising room, board, and wages for cooking at the Broken Bell Ranch through the busy summer season. Her father's debts had driven her west, away from everything familiar, toward a future she could not yet imagine. A tall man stood near the general store, his weathered face partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He watched her with an intensity that made Rosalie's breath catch, and when their eyes met across the dusty street, something shifted in the air between them. He approached with long, confident strides, his boots kicking up small clouds of red dust with each step. "Miss Warren." His voice was deep and warm, carrying a hint of uncertainty that seemed at odds with his commanding presence. "Yes." She set down her bags and extended a gloved hand, suddenly aware of how travel-worn she must appear. "You must be from the Broken Bell Ranch." "I am the Broken Bell Ranch." He took her hand gently, and even through her glove she felt the calluses that spoke of hard work and long days. "Preston Beckett. I own the place. Welcome to Chloride, Miss Warren. I hope the journey was not too difficult. Please call me Rosalie. And the journey was long but manageable." She studied him more closely now, taking in the strong jaw, the sun-bronzed skin, and eyes the color of the summer sky. He could not have been more than 30, perhaps only 5 or 6 years her senior, but he carried himself with the gravity of someone who had shouldered responsibility for most of his life. Preston picked up both her bags as though they weighed nothing. "The wagon is just there. It is about an hour's ride to the ranch. I brought water and food if you need to refresh yourself before we head out." The consideration in his gesture touched something in Rosalie's chest. Back in Boston, she had been invisible, just another young woman struggling to survive in her late father's shadow of debt. Here, this rancher treated her with a respect she had not known she was missing. "That would be wonderful, thank you." They climbed onto a sturdy wagon, and Preston handed her a canteen and a cloth bundle containing fresh bread and cheese. As they rolled out of town toward the distant mountains, Rosalie found herself stealing glances at him. His hands held the reins with practiced ease, and despite the heat, he seemed perfectly at home in this harsh landscape. "How long have you owned the ranch?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Nearly 8 years now. My father started it, but he passed when I was 22. Been building it back up since then." His jaw tightened slightly, and Rosalie recognized the look of someone carrying grief they had learned to live with. Lost most of the herd in a drought that first year. Had to start over with almost nothing. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. He glanced at her, and something in his expression softened. But sometimes starting over is exactly what a person needs. Sometimes it is the only way forward. Rosalie understood that truth more deeply than he could know. Yes, sometimes it is. The ranch appeared on the horizon like a mirage, sprawling buildings clustered around a main house that was larger than she had expected. Corrals held dozens of horses and cattle, and several men worked in the distance, tending to various tasks. Preston guided the wagon up to the main house, a solid structure of adobe and wood with a wide porch that offered shade from the brutal sun. "I should explain the situation," Preston said as he helped her down from the wagon, his hands steady on her waist. "My previous cook, Martha, she was here for 15 years, practically raised me after my mother died." She passed away this spring, and the men have been making do with whatever they can cobble together. I need someone who can feed a crew of 12 through the busy season. We are moving cattle, branding calves, breaking horses. The men work hard, and they need good meals to keep their strength up. I understand. Rosalie met his gaze directly. I may not look like much after 3 days on a stagecoach, but I am a capable cook. My mother ran a boarding house before she died, and I learned everything from her. I can make hearty meals for working men, and I will not waste your supplies or your money. Something flickered in Preston's eyes, approval mixed with something deeper that made Rosalie's pulse quicken. I do not doubt it. Come, let me show you to your quarters and the kitchen. The house was surprisingly well maintained inside, with sturdy furniture and clean floors. Preston led her through a spacious parlor to a room off the kitchen that would be hers. It was simple but comfortable, with a real bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. After months of sharing a cramped boarding house room in Boston, it felt like luxury. The kitchen is through here. Preston opened the door to reveal a large workspace with a cast iron stove, ample counter space, and shelves stocked with supplies. The pantry and cold cellar are well stocked. If you need anything from town, we make a supply run every 2 weeks. The men eat breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, and supper after the day's work is done. Martha used to ring the bell on the porch to call them in. Rosalie walked through the kitchen, running her hands over the surfaces, opening cabinets to see what tools were available. She could work with this. She could make this space her own, at least for the summer. When would you like me to start? You must be exhausted from your journey. Take tomorrow to rest and get your bearings. The men can survive 1 more day of their own cooking. He smiled, and the transformation of his face from serious to warm made Rosalie's heart skip. But if you are up to it, breakfast the day after would be wonderful. I will be ready. She returned his smile, feeling the first stirrings of something she could not quite name. Hope, perhaps, or possibility. Preston lingered in the doorway, seeming reluctant to leave. Miss Warren, Rosalie, I want you to know that you are safe here. The men are good workers, respectful. If anyone causes you any trouble, you come directly to me. Understood? Understood. The protectiveness in his voice sent warmth spreading through her chest. Thank you, Mr. Beckett. Preston. His eyes held hers for a long moment. Please call me Preston. After he left, Rosalie sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands trembling slightly. She had expected a ranch owner, someone to give her orders and pay her wages. She had not expected Preston Beckett, with his quiet strength and unexpected kindness, with eyes that seemed to see straight through to the lonely, frightened woman she was trying so hard not to be. The next morning, Rosalie woke before dawn, unable to sleep despite Preston's insistence that she rest. She dressed in her simplest work dress and went to explore the kitchen more thoroughly. In the cool morning air, she took inventory of the supplies, planned her first meals, and began to feel a sense of purpose she had been missing for months. She was kneading bread dough when Preston appeared in the kitchen doorway, his hair damp as though he had just washed. I thought you were taking the day to rest. I am not very good at resting. Rosalie continued working the dough, conscious of his gaze on her. Besides, I wanted to familiarize myself with everything, old habits. He poured himself coffee from the pot she had made and leaned against the counter, watching her work with an expression that made her skin warm. Your mother's boarding house. You must have learned to wake early, 4 o'clock every morning for years. She shaped the dough into loaves and set them aside to rise. I used to resent it, but now I find I cannot sleep past dawn no matter how tired I am. I understand that. Preston took a slow sip of his coffee. Ranch life gets into your blood, Even when I am exhausted, I wake with the sun. Cannot seem to help myself. They fell into an easy conversation, trading stories of their childhoods, of the responsibilities that had shaped them. Rosalie learned that Preston had been only 17 when his mother died of fever, leaving him to care for a younger sister while his father focused on the ranch. The sister had married 2 years ago and moved to California with her husband, leaving Preston alone except for his crew. "Do you miss her?" Rosalie asked gently. "Every day." His voice carried a note of loneliness that resonated deep in her own heart. "This house feels too big for just one person, too quiet." Martha filled some of that silence, but now. He trailed off, staring into his coffee cup. "Now you are alone again." Rosalie understood that particular ache all too well. She wiped flour from her hands and moved to pour herself coffee, standing closer to him than was strictly proper. "I lost both my parents within a year of each other. My mother to pneumonia, my father to his own despair and the bottom of too many whiskey bottles. The silence after they were gone, it was deafening." Preston's hand moved as though to touch hers but stopped just short, hovering in the space between them. "I am sorry. That must have been unbearable." "It was. But we survive what we must, do we not? We keep moving forward because stopping means surrendering, and some of us are too stubborn for that." She smiled up at him, and when his fingers finally brushed against hers, the touch sent electricity racing up her arm. Too stubborn indeed. His voice had gone rough, and the way he was looking at her made Rosalie feel like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. "Rosalie, I should tell you that I am very glad you are here. Not just for the cooking, but I think maybe this ranch needed someone like you. I think maybe I needed someone like you." Her breath caught in her throat. It was too soon for such honesty, too fast to feel this pull toward a man she had known less than a day. But the connection between them felt as real and solid as the ground beneath her feet, undeniable and somehow inevitable. "Preston." Whatever she had been about to say was interrupted by the sound of boots on the porch and men's voices calling out. Preston stepped back, his hand falling away from hers as he cleared his throat. "The crew is up. I should get out there." But he paused in the doorway, turning back to look at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Will you join me for supper tonight, after the men have eaten? I would like to talk more, just the two of us." "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. "I would like that." He smiled that transformative smile again and was gone, leaving Rosalie standing in the kitchen with her heart pounding and her mind racing. She had come here for a job, for survival, for a way to escape her father's debts and start fresh. She had not come here to fall for a rancher with kind eyes and a lonely heart. But as she returned to her bread dough, she could not quite convince herself that it would be a bad thing if she did. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both foreign and strangely comfortable. Rosalie rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for the crew, hearty meals of eggs, bacon, biscuits, and strong coffee. The men were polite and grateful, clearly starved for decent food after months of making do. She prepared substantial dinners and suppers, learning their preferences, adding little touches that made the meals special. Extra honey for the biscuits, a berry pie on Sunday. Stew thick enough to stick to their ribs during the long afternoon hours. And every evening, after the crew had eaten and dispersed to their bunks or evening chores, Preston would appear in the kitchen. Sometimes he helped her clean up, his presence easy and companionable. Other times he would sit at the table and simply watch her work, asking about her day, sharing stories of his own. They talked about everything and nothing, building a foundation of understanding that felt more intimate than any physical touch. One evening, nearly 2 weeks after her arrival, Preston found her on the porch after supper, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and handed her a cup of coffee. "You have made quite an impression on the men," he said quietly. "They have been working harder, staying in better spirits. Good food makes more of a difference than people realize. I am glad I can help." Rosalie cradled the warm cup in her hands, hyper-aware of his nearness. "This place, it is starting to feel like home. I did not expect that." "No." He turned to look at her, his profile sharp against the dying light. "What did you expect?" "I expected to feel like an outsider. A temporary worker just passing through. Instead, I feel like I belong here in a way I never belonged in Boston." She met his gaze, feeling brave in the gathering darkness. "Is that strange?" "Not strange at all." His hand found hers on the bench between them, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt both natural and thrilling. "Rosalie, I need to be honest with you about something. I hired you for the season because I needed a cook. But keeping you here only through summer, the thought of you leaving in a few months, it is becoming unbearable." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Preston, I know it is too soon. I know we have only known each other a short time. But I have never felt this way about anyone, never wanted someone to stay the way I want you to stay. Not just for this season, but for all of them. Every season, for the rest of my life." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, sending shivers up her spine. "I am not asking for an answer now. I just needed you to know what I am feeling. Needed you to know that when I look at you, I see my future, and it is the first time since my father died that I have felt truly hopeful about what is to come." Tears pricked at Rosalie's eyes. All the fear and uncertainty that had plagued her since her father's death seemed to melt away in the warmth of Preston's confession. "I see it too," she whispered. "When I look at you, when I am here on this ranch, I see a life I never dared to dream of, a place to belong, someone to belong to." Preston lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then stay. Not just for the season, but truly stay. Let me court you properly. Let me show you what kind of life we could build together." "Yes." The word came out strong and sure, no hesitation coloring her voice. "Yes, I will stay. I want to see what we could be, Preston. I want that more than anything." He pulled her into his arms then, holding her close as the desert night settled around them. Rosalie felt his heart beating against her cheek, steady and strong, and knew she had finally found what she had been searching for without even realizing she was looking. Safety, home, love. The summer days grew longer and hotter, and with them, the connection between Rosalie and Preston deepened into something profound and unshakable. He began finding excuses to spend more time near the house, checking on repairs that did not need checking, discussing supply orders that could have waited. She began preparing his favorites without asking, learning the little things that made him smile, the way he liked his coffee, the spice level of his chili, the fact that he had a weakness for apple cake that made him almost boyish in his enthusiasm. The crew noticed, of course. It was impossible to hide the way Preston looked at her or the way she lit up whenever he entered a room. But rather than causing problems, the men seemed pleased. They had known Preston for years, had seen him work himself to exhaustion season after season with no one to share his burdens or his triumphs. Seeing him happy, seeing life return to his eyes, made them protective of whatever was growing between their boss and the cook who had changed everything. One scorching afternoon in late July, Rosalie was in the kitchen preparing supper when she heard a commotion outside. Men shouting, horses whinnying in distress. She rushed to the window to see several riders approaching at a gallop, and her blood ran cold when she recognized the tension in their postures. Preston burst through the door moments later, his face grim. "Rosalie, I need you to stay inside and away from the windows. We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Fear clawed at her throat, but she kept her voice steady. "Cattle rustlers have been spotted on the northern border of my land. We are going to ride out and deal with it." He gripped her shoulders, his eyes intense. "I need you to promise me you will stay safe. If anything happens, if anyone you do not recognize tries to approach the house, you take the rifle from my study and you protect yourself. Can you do that?" "Preston, you cannot just ride into danger. I have to. This is my land, my herd, my responsibility. But I will come back to you, Rosalie. I swear on everything I hold dear, I will come back." He pulled her against him, kissing her forehead with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "I have too much to lose now. I will be careful." She clung to him for a moment, breathing in his scent of leather and sun-warmed skin, trying to memorize the feeling of his arms around her. "Come back to me, please." "I will, I promise." He kissed her then, properly this time, his lips claiming hers with a passion that spoke of all the feelings they had been carefully nurturing. When he pulled away, they were both breathless. "When I get back, we need to talk about our future, about making this permanent." Then he was gone, riding out with his men toward whatever danger awaited them on the northern range. Rosalie stood on the porch, watching until they disappeared from view, her hands clenched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. She had just found him, just allowed herself to hope for a future beyond mere survival. The thought of losing him now, of having that hope ripped away, was more than she could bear. The hours that followed were the longest of Rosalie's life. She tried to keep busy, preparing supper even though she had no idea when or if the men would return to eat it. She checked and rechecked the rifle Preston had mentioned, making sure it was loaded and ready even though the thought of actually having to use it made her stomach turn. She paced the house, jumped at every sound, and prayed to a God she was not sure was listening. Sunset came and went. The food grew cold, still no sign of Preston or the crew. Rosalie lit lamps throughout the house, needing the light to push back the darkness that seemed to be closing in from all sides. She was standing at the window, staring out at the moonlit desert, when she finally saw movement on the horizon. Riders, coming at a steady pace rather than a gallop. She counted them frantically, trying to see if everyone had returned. Her heart lurched when she spotted Preston at the front of the group, sitting tall in his saddle, apparently unharmed. Relief hit her with such force that she had to grip the windowsill to keep from collapsing. She ran out to meet them, propriety forgotten in her desperation, to confirm that he was truly safe. Preston dismounted before his horse had fully stopped and caught her as she flew into his arms, lifting her off her feet and holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You are all right," she gasped against his chest. "Thank God you are all right. I told you I would come back." His voice was rough with exhaustion and emotion. "I had too much waiting for me here to take unnecessary risks." The crew dispersed to tend to the horses and clean up, giving them a moment of privacy. Preston pulled back just enough to cup Rosalie's face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she had not realized were falling. "Did you catch them?" she asked. "We did." "Turn them over to the sheriff in Chloride. They will stand trial and my cattle are safe." He pressed his forehead to hers, his breath warm against her skin. "But all I could think about out there was getting back to you, making sure you were safe. Making sure I had the chance to tell you everything I have been holding back. Tell me now." Her hands fisted in his shirt, anchoring herself to him. "Tell me everything. I love you." The words were simple but carried the weight of absolute truth. "I am in love with you, Rosalie Warren." I think I have been since the moment you stepped off that stagecoach looking like you were ready to take on the entire desert if necessary. You are strong and kind and brave, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that taking a chance on a lonely rancher was the best decision you ever made. Joy exploded in Rosalie's chest, bright and overwhelming. I love you too. So much it frightens me sometimes. I came here running from my past, never expecting to find a future worth staying for. But you changed everything, Preston. You made me believe in hope again, in happiness, in the possibility of a life filled with more than just survival. He kissed her then, slow and deep and filled with promise. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling despite their tears. The crew had tactfully made themselves scarce, but Rosalie could see curtains twitching in the bunkhouse and knew they had an audience. She found she did not care. Marry me. Preston said it not as a question but as a statement of intent, as though the outcome had never been in doubt. Not next year or next month. Soon, as soon as we can arrange it. I do not want to spend another day without knowing you are mine and I am yours in every way that matters. Yes. Rosalie laughed through her tears, dizzy with happiness. Yes, I will marry you, tomorrow if you can find a preacher willing to perform the ceremony. Do not tempt me. But he was grinning now, all the tension and worry of the day melting away in the face of their shared joy. How about next week? That will give us time to ride to Prescott where there is a proper church and a preacher. We can make a trip of it, spend a few days away from the ranch. Closest thing to a honeymoon we are likely to get during the busy season. Next week is perfect. She kissed him again, savoring the feeling of his arms around her, knowing she would never tire of this. I cannot believe this is real, that I get to keep you. You are stuck with me now. His eyes sparkled with mischief and love in equal measure, for all the seasons forever. Just like I wanted from the start. The wedding took place the following Wednesday in a small church in Prescott, with Preston's crew and his sister traveling from California to attend. Rosalie wore a simple dress of pale blue that Preston had insisted on buying for her in town, despite her protests that it was too extravagant. His face, when he saw her walking down the aisle, made every penny worth it. He looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he had ever whispered into the desert night, and when they exchanged vows, his hands trembled as he slid a simple gold band onto her finger. I promise to love you through every season, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Through the heat of summer and the cold of winter, through drought and plenty, through everything life throws at us. You are my home, Rosalie, my heart, my everything. And I promise to stand beside you, she replied, her own voice breaking. To build a life with you, to fill your house with warmth and laughter, to be your partner in all things. I was lost when I came to you, but you helped me find myself again. You gave me a reason to believe in tomorrow. The kiss that sealed their marriage was witnessed by a church full of people who cheered and applauded. But Rosalie was aware only of Preston, of the way he held her like she was precious and fragile and strong all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying openly, too happy to care about appearances. They spent 3 days in Prescott, staying in a hotel that felt impossibly luxurious after months of ranch life. Preston was an attentive and passionate husband, and Rosalie discovered depths of intimacy and connection she had never imagined possible. He was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished, and when she finally fell asleep in his arms each night, she marveled at how completely her life had transformed. You have any regrets? Preston asked on their last morning in town, as they lay tangled together in the soft hotel bed. About leaving Boston, about agreeing to stay with a rough rancher in the middle of nowhere. Rosalie propped herself up on one elbow to look at him properly, taking in his sleep-mussed hair and the contentment in his eyes. "My only regret is that I did not come sooner, that we did not have more time together before now. But every moment from here forward is ours, and I intend to treasure each one." He pulled her down for a lingering kiss. "I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret taking a chance on me. I am going to build you the life you deserve, fill our home with love and laughter and everything good. You already have." She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "You already have." They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, and if life had been good before, it became something extraordinary after. Rosalie threw herself into making the house a true home, adding touches that reflected both their personalities. Curtains in the windows, fresh flowers on the table when she could find them, books on the shelves. Preston's serious demeanor softened even further in her presence, and the crew remarked that they had never seen him smile so much. As summer gave way to autumn, Rosalie and Preston settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. They worked side by side, building not just a ranch but a partnership that grew stronger with each passing day. He consulted her on business decisions, valuing her sharp mind and practical nature. She supported his ambitions to expand the herd and improve the land. Together, they were formidable. One cool October evening, Rosalie was preparing supper when a wave of dizziness swept over her. She gripped the counter, waiting for it to pass, but it was followed immediately by nausea that sent her running for the basin. Preston found her a few minutes later, pale and shaking, and his face drained of color. "What is wrong? Are you ill? Should I ride for the doctor?" He was already reaching for his hat, ready to sprint for his horse. "No, wait." Rosalie caught his arm, realization dawning with a mixture of joy and trepidation. "Preston, I do not think I am ill. I think I might be with child." He froze, his eyes going wide. "You are pregnant, I think so." "I have been feeling strange for the past week, and I am late for my courses. I did not want to say anything until I was certain, but now." She placed a hand over her still flat stomach, overwhelmed by the enormity of it. "I think we are going to have a baby." Preston's reaction was not what she expected. His face crumpled, and he sank into a chair as though his legs would no longer support him. For a terrifying moment, Rosalie thought he was upset, that perhaps he did not want children. But then she saw the tears streaming down his face and realized he was overcome with emotion. "Preston," she knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. "Talk to me. What are you feeling? A baby?" His voice broke on the words. "We are going to have a baby, a family." After being alone for so long, after thinking I would spend my life managing this ranch with no one to share it with or pass it on to, now I have you. And soon I will have our child. It is more than I ever dared to hope for, Rosalie. More than I deserve. Relief and love flooded through her. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You deserve every bit of happiness, every ounce of love, and our child is going to be so lucky to have you as a father. You are going to be wonderful at this. I am terrified." But he was smiling through his tears, his hands moving to rest gently on her stomach. "What if I do something wrong? What if I am not enough? Then we will figure it out together the same way we have figured out everything else. We are partners, remember, through all the seasons." She leaned in to kiss him softly. "Besides, something tells me you are going to be a natural." The doctor confirmed her suspicions a week later, declaring Rosalie healthy and predicting the baby would arrive sometime in late May or early June. Preston became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more, forbidding her from lifting anything heavy, hovering anxiously whenever she so much as yawned. It would have been annoying if it were not so endearing. "I am not made of glass," she reminded him repeatedly. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am strong and I am healthy and I am perfectly capable of continuing to run this household. I know. But his worry never quite disappeared, manifesting in little ways throughout the day, making sure she had enough water, bringing her a chair when she had been standing too long, checking on her multiple times throughout the day. I just cannot lose you. I only just found you. You will not lose me. She took his face in her hands, making him focus on her words. I am here and I am staying. Through this pregnancy, through raising our child, through growing old together on this ranch. I am not going anywhere, Preston Beckett. Winter brought cooler temperatures to the Arizona desert, along with preparations for the coming baby. Preston built a cradle with his own hands, working late into the evenings to sand and polish the wood until it was smooth as silk. Rosalie sewed tiny clothes and blankets, marveling at how something so small would soon fill their home with new life. His sister sent a package from California filled with gifts and advice, along with a letter expressing her joy at finally becoming an aunt. The crew, too, seemed excited about the impending arrival. They went out of their way to help Rosalie with tasks that were becoming more difficult as her belly swelled, chopping extra wood and hauling water without being asked. A few of the married men shared their own experiences of fatherhood, and Preston listened intently, determined to learn everything he could. As Rosalie's pregnancy progressed, Preston became even more attentive, if such a thing were possible. He would spend hours talking to her belly, telling their unborn child stories about the ranch, about the mother who would love them beyond measure. On quiet evenings, they would sit together on the porch, Rosalie cradled against Preston's chest, planning their future as a family of 3. What should we name the baby? Rosalie asked one particularly beautiful night in March when the stars seemed close enough to touch. I have been thinking about that. Preston's hand traced idle circles on her stomach, a gesture that had become second nature. If it is a girl, what about Rose? After you in a way, but her own person too. I like that. Rosalie smiled into the darkness. And if it is a boy, Samuel maybe, after my father, he would have loved to meet his grandchild to see what we have built here. Melancholy colored his words, but also acceptance. He always said the ranch needed a family to make it complete. Guess he was right, as usual. Samuel or Rose Beckett. She tested the names, feeling their rightness settle into her bones. Either way, this child is going to be so loved, so very, very loved. Spring arrived with wildflowers painting the desert in impossible colors, and Rosalie grew larger and more uncomfortable as her due date approached. The baby seemed determined to make its presence known, kicking and moving constantly, especially at night. Preston would place his hand on her belly to feel the movement, his face lighting up with wonder every single time. Strong, he would murmur. This one is going to be strong just like the mother. Or stubborn like the father, Rosalie would tease back, but there was no heat in it. These quiet moments of connection, of shared anticipation, were precious beyond measure. The pains began on a warm morning in late May, while Rosalie was kneading bread in the kitchen. She gasped as the first contraction hit, gripping the counter until it passed. Preston, who had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense when she needed him, appeared within seconds. Is it time? His face had gone pale, but his hands were steady as he helped her to a chair. I think so. The pains are still far apart, but yes, I think this is it. She tried to smile reassuringly, but another contraction stole her breath. Preston moved with swift efficiency, sending one of the men to town for the doctor and midwife, helping Rosalie to their bedroom, gathering the supplies they had prepared for this moment. His fear was palpable, but he hid it well, focusing entirely on making sure she was as comfortable as possible. The hours that followed blurred together in a haze of pain and determination. The midwife, a capable woman named Sarah, arrived and took charge with practiced calm. Preston refused to leave Rosalie's side despite Sarah's suggestion that he might prefer to wait elsewhere, holding her hand through each contraction, whispering encouragement and love even when she cursed him for doing this to her. "I am never touching you again," she panted between pains, and despite the seriousness of the situation, Preston laughed. "Yes, you will. You love me too much to stay angry." He pressed a kiss to her sweat-dampened forehead. "And you are doing so well, my brave, strong, incredible wife. Just a little longer, and we will meet our baby." The sun was setting when Samuel Preston Beckett finally made his entrance into the world, announcing his arrival with lusty cries that filled the house with sound and life. The midwife placed the squirming, red-faced infant on Rosalie's chest, and everything else in the world ceased to exist. Preston leaned over them both, tears streaming down his face as he stroked their son's downy head with one gentle finger. "He is perfect," Preston breathed. "Absolutely perfect. Just like his mother." Rosalie could not speak past the lump in her throat, too overcome with emotion to form words. Their son, the tiny miracle they had created together, squinted up at them with unfocused eyes that would eventually turn the same sky blue as his father's. In that moment, holding her husband and son, Rosalie felt a completeness she had never known was possible. "Thank you," Preston whispered against her hair. "Thank you for him, for us, for everything you have given me. I love you more than words can express. I love you too." She turned her head to kiss him properly, a promise and a beginning all at once. "Thank you for begging me to stay, for seeing something in me worth fighting for giving me this beautiful life." The weeks following Samuel's birth were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Rosalie had help from Sarah for the first week, and Preston took on more of the household tasks, determined to ease her burden as much as possible. The crew, hardened cowboys who had seen every kind of danger the frontier had to offer, turned into complete softies around the baby, taking turns holding him and offering unsolicited advice on everything from colic to teething. Preston was a natural father, just as Rosalie had predicted. He would spend hours simply watching Samuel sleep, marveling at tiny fingers and toes, talking to his son about the ranch he would one day inherit. When the baby cried at night, Preston was always the first to wake, changing diapers and bringing Samuel to Rosalie to nurse before settling them both back to sleep. "You are exhausted," Rosalie protested one night when Preston got up for the third time. "Let me handle him." "You have work in the morning. So do you." He lifted Samuel gently, expertly supporting the small head. "We are in this together, remember, partners through all the seasons. That includes the sleepless ones." As Samuel grew from a tiny newborn into a chubby, alert infant, the ranch seemed to come alive with new energy. His laughter became the soundtrack of their days, and his milestones, rolling over, sitting up, his first tooth, were celebrated with a joy that seemed almost disproportionate but felt entirely appropriate. One evening in late autumn, when Samuel was about 5 months old, Rosalie found Preston standing in the doorway of the nursery, watching their son sleep with an expression of such profound contentment that it made her heart ache. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly, slipping her arm around his waist. "I am thinking about the day you arrived in Chloride, how I stood in town waiting for the stagecoach, hoping the new cook would be competent and reliable. How I never imagined the woman who stepped down from that coach would become my entire world." He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I am thinking about how I begged you to stay, and how that was both the bravest and easiest thing I ever did. And I am thinking about how grateful I am that you said yes." I am grateful too. Rosalie rested her head on his shoulder, watching their son's chest rise and fall with each peaceful breath. I was so lost when I came here, so afraid of what the future held. I never dreamed I would find not just safety but true happiness, a partner, a family, a home in every sense of the word. Think you could handle doing this again? Preston's voice held a note of hope and mischief. In a year or two, maybe. I was an only child until my sister came along, and I always wished for a bigger family. If you are willing, that is. No pressure. Rosalie laughed quietly, turning in his arms to face him properly. Are you asking if I want more children with you, Preston Beckett? I suppose I am. He cupped her face tenderly. I know it is not easy, and I will understand if one is enough. But watching you with Samuel, seeing what an incredible mother you are, it makes me want to fill this house with children. To build the kind of family neither of us had growing up. Loud and chaotic and full of love. I want that too. She kissed him softly, feeling the familiar spark that had never dimmed between them. Maybe not right away, but yes, I want to give Samuel brothers and sisters. I want to fill our home with noise and laughter and all the beautiful chaos that comes with a big family. I want to build that life with you. Time moved forward in the way it does on a working ranch, measured in seasons and milestones rather than calendar dates. Samuel's first birthday was celebrated with a cake that he demolished with enthusiastic hands, laughing as frosting covered his face. Rosalie discovered she was pregnant again just before Christmas, and Preston's reaction was every bit as emotional as the first time, though tempered now with the confidence of experience. Their daughter, Rose Margaret, arrived on a cool morning in August, 2 months after Samuel's second birthday. The birth was easier this time, and when Preston held his daughter for the first time, Rosalie saw a softness in his face that made her fall in love with him all over again. She has your eyes, he murmured, tracing Rose's tiny features with infinite gentleness. And hopefully your temperament, because we cannot handle two of me in this house. Samuel was initially suspicious of his new sister, but that wariness quickly transformed into fierce protectiveness. He would sit beside her cradle for hours, singing nonsense songs and showing her his toys, convinced that she needed him to explain how the world worked. Preston and Rosalie would watch their children together, hands intertwined, marveling at the life they had built. The ranch prospered under Preston's careful management and Rosalie's steady presence. They expanded the herd, improved the land, hired additional crew as needed. Rosalie's role evolved beyond just cooking. She managed the household finances, kept the books, and became Preston's partner in every sense of the word. Her insights proved invaluable, and Preston never made a major decision without consulting her first. 2 years after Rose's birth, Rosalie gave birth to twin boys, Jack and Henry, who arrived early and scared them all half to death, but proved to be fighters from the start. The house was indeed loud and chaotic now, filled with the constant noise of children playing, laughing, and occasionally fighting. But it was also filled with love, so much love that sometimes Preston would stop in the middle of a task and simply look around in wonder at what they had created. 4 children, Rosalie said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set while the older children played in the yard under the watchful eye of one of the crew. The twins were asleep in their cradles inside, and for a few precious moments, they had peace. Can you believe it? 4 children in less than 6 years. I can believe it because you are extraordinary. Preston pulled her close, and despite the exhaustion that came with raising 4 young children, Rosalie felt utterly content. You have given me everything I never dared to dream of: a family, a home, a reason to wake up grateful every single day. We gave each other that." She looked up at him, seeing threads of silver just beginning to appear in his dark hair, the lines around his eyes that came from years of squinting into the sun and smiling at his children. He was even more handsome now than he had been that first day in Chloride, made beautiful by love and laughter and the life they shared. "I came here hired for a season, running from my past, and you gave me a future beyond my wildest imagination, because I could not let you go." He kissed her softly, a familiar touch that still made her heart race. "I knew from the beginning that one season with you would never be enough. I needed all of them. Every season, every year, every moment, forever. And you have them." She rested her hand over his heart, feeling its steady rhythm. "All my seasons are yours, Preston. Always have been, from the moment I said yes to staying. From the moment I fell in love with a rancher who saw me not as I was but as I could be. Who gave me room to grow and flourish and become more than I ever thought possible." As the years continued to pass, their children grew into capable, confident individuals who inherited the best of both parents. Samuel became a natural horseman and leader, clearly destined to take over the ranch one day. Rose had her mother's practical nature and sharp mind, already helping with the household accounts by the time she was 10. The twins were inseparable troublemakers who kept everyone on their toes but whose hearts were as big as the Arizona sky. Preston and Rosalie grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year rather than fading. They still found moments to steal away, leaving the children with trusted crew members while they rode out to a favorite spot on the ranch to watch the sunset and talk about everything and nothing. The physical attraction that had sparked between them never dimmed, but it was complemented now by a profound emotional and spiritual connection that made them truly one. When Samuel turned 18, Preston officially made him a partner in the ranch, recognizing that his son was ready for more responsibility. When Rose expressed an interest in teaching, Preston and Rosalie supported her fully, helping her pursue the education necessary to achieve her dream. The twins, still young and figuring out their paths, showed promise in different areas, and their parents encouraged them to explore their interests without pressure or expectation. "We did well," Preston said one evening as they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. The children had organized a surprise party, inviting neighbors and friends from town, and the house was full of people and laughter and joy. "Look at them, Rosalie. Look at what we built together." Rosalie surveyed the room, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Samuel was dancing with a young woman from a neighboring ranch, clearly smitten. Rose was deep in conversation with the town school teacher, planning her future with characteristic determination. The twins were entertaining a group of younger children with exaggerated stories that were mostly fiction but entirely entertaining. And throughout it all, the love and security Preston and Rosalie had worked so hard to create was palpable, a foundation their children would carry with them always. "We did more than well." She turned to her husband, the man who had begged her to stay all those years ago, who had offered her not just a job but a life. "We built something extraordinary, a legacy that will outlast us both." Preston pulled her into his arms, and they swayed to the music spilling from the house, dancing under the stars in the place that had brought them together. "Thank you for staying," he whispered against her hair. "For taking a chance on a lonely rancher who did not know how to ask for what he needed. For filling my life with more love and joy than I ever imagined possible. Thank you for asking." Rosalie looked up at him, seeing the boy he had been and the man he had become, loving every version of him with her whole heart. "For seeing something in me worth keeping. For giving me a place to belong and a reason to believe in happily ever after." As the party continued around them, Preston and Rosalie remained in their own small world, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life worth celebrating. The hired cook and the rancher who had begged her to stay. Partners through all seasons, just as he had promised that very first night when he had taken her hand and asked her to take a chance on forever. And she had said yes, that simple word changing both their lives in ways neither could have predicted, but both would be eternally grateful for. Because sometimes, the best things in life come when we least expect them, when we are brave enough to say yes to possibility, and open enough to let love transform us into the people we were always meant to become. Years continued to unfold in their beautiful, ordinary way. Samuel eventually married his sweetheart and brought her to live at the ranch, building a house nearby and starting his own family. Preston and Rosalie became grandparents, marveling at the miracle of watching their children experience the same joys and challenges they had faced decades earlier. Rose did become a teacher, opening a small school in Chloride where she educated children with patience and passion. She married later in life, choosing a quiet scholar who appreciated her brilliant mind and independent spirit. The twins eventually found their own paths as well, one becoming a skilled veterinarian who specialized in ranch animals, the other discovering a talent for woodworking that led to a successful furniture business. Through it all, the Broken Bell Ranch remained the heart of the family, the place where everyone gathered for holidays and celebrations, for comfort during difficult times and joy during triumphant ones. Preston and Rosalie were the steady center around which everything else revolved, their love story becoming legend among those who knew them. "Tell us again how you met," the grandchildren would beg during family gatherings, never tiring of the story even though they had heard it dozens of times. And Preston would look at Rosalie with the same love and wonder he had shown that first day in Chloride, and he would begin the tale. "Your grandmother stepped off a stagecoach looking like she was ready to take on the whole territory. I knew right then that my life was about to change forever. I just had to convince her to stay long enough to see it too. And did you?" the children would ask, even though they knew the answer. "Well," Rosalie would say with a smile that held decades of happiness and love, "I was only supposed to stay for the season. But your grandfather, he had other ideas. He asked me to stay for all his seasons, forever, and I could not imagine a better offer." On their 40th wedding anniversary, Preston and Rosalie sat together on the porch that had witnessed so much of their life together. Their hair was silver now, their faces lined with the marks of time well spent. But their hands still fit together perfectly, and the love between them burned as steady and true as it had 4 decades earlier. "Any regrets?" Preston asked, echoing the question he had posed on their honeymoon so many years ago. "Not a single one." Rosalie leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson, the same colors that had greeted her arrival in this place that had become her home. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed, a home, a family, a love that grew deeper and stronger with every passing year. How could I possibly regret any of it? I am the lucky one." Preston pressed a kiss to her silver hair. "I asked you to stay and you said yes." That one word changed everything, turned a house into a home, filled my empty life with meaning and purpose and love. You were hired for the season, but you stayed for all of them. You stayed forever. And I would do it again. She looked up at him, seeing past the physical changes time had wrought to the man beneath, the one who had captured her heart from the very beginning. "In every lifetime, in every season, I would choose you. I would choose this life. I would choose us." They sat together as the sun set on another day, another year, another season of their life together. The desert stretched out before them, vast and beautiful and unforgiving, but they had tamed it together, built something lasting in the midst of its harshness. The sounds of family drifted from inside the house, grandchildren playing and adult children talking, the continuation of everything. Preston and Rosalie had started with a simple question and an even simpler answer: stay. Yes. Forever. 3 words that had built a dynasty, created a family, and proven that sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them. When a desperate woman steps off a stagecoach looking for temporary work and finds permanent love. When a lonely rancher takes a chance on asking for what he wants and discovers it was exactly what he needed all along. The years turned to decades, and Preston and Rosalie grew old together in the house they had filled with love and laughter. They watched their children's children have children of their own, saw the ranch continue to prosper under Samuel's capable management, celebrated every milestone and mourned every loss as a family united by the foundation 2 people had built so many years ago. And when Preston passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Rosalie holding his hand and their children gathered around them, his last words were ones of gratitude and love. "Thank you for staying," he whispered, "for all the seasons, for forever." Rosalie lived another 5 years, surrounded by the family she and Preston had created, before joining her husband in whatever came next. At her funeral, held at the ranch on a beautiful spring day, her great-grandchildren asked to hear the story one more time. How their great-grandmother had come to Chloride for a single season and ended up staying forever. How their great-grandfather had begged her to stay and built her a life worth staying for. And as the family gathered to celebrate a life well lived and a love that had transformed everyone it touched, they understood the truth at the heart of the story. That sometimes, taking a chance on the unexpected leads to the most extraordinary outcomes. That love, real love, is built not in grand gestures but in daily choices to show up, to stay, to keep choosing each other through every season that comes. The Broken Bell Ranch stands still, passed down through generations of Becketts, each one carrying the legacy of Preston and Rosalie in their hearts. And on summer evenings, when the light turns golden and the air fills with the sounds of family, some say you can still feel their presence. Still see them sitting together on that porch, hands intertwined, watching the sunset paint the desert in impossible colors while they count their blessings and give thanks for the day a woman stepped off a stagecoach and into a future neither could have imagined but both were brave enough to build. She was hired for the season, but he begged her to stay for all his seasons forever. And in saying yes, in taking that leap of faith, Rosalie Warren Beckett proved that sometimes the best things in life are found not where we expect them, but where we are brave enough to look. In the eyes of a lonely rancher who saw her worth, in the vast expanse of the Arizona desert, in the simple words that changed everything: stay, yes, forever.